Welcome to the EduCurious Podcast, where we highlight exceptional educators and dive deep into complex issues. I'm Dr. Amber Love Johnson, and today's guest is local artist Blair Petersen Updike. Good morning and welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you, Blair.
Thank you for having me.
So today, being with education, I wanted to talk a little bit about the creative learner and the process and how you learned growing up and how you carry that with you when you impart some of your art classes and art lessons with other people.
Well, growing up, I think I wasn't a traditional learner. I know that I didn't function well within the elementary school I was in. Everyone was reading faster than me. I used to divide out the class for reading into 3 separate groups, which made you feel worse. So I was always at least in the middle group, which was still made you feel bad when all your friends were in the bigger group. I just didn't get it. And part of it might have been an eye problem, and part of it might have been how I learned. But I remember I did not read well until the summer of 4th grade. I was like, I'm bored, which is not acceptable to either of my parents. And my mom said, why don't you find something to read? And both of my parents were huge readers. I went through the library and I found this book with kind of Southern Belle looking ladies on the cover that was sort of mysterious. And it was Jane Eyre. And I read Jane Eyre the summer of 4th grade, and then I could read. And then I was in all the advanced classes. It was a self-driven learning thing. And I was curious about something because it was enticing. And that's why I learned. And I had time to be bored and wasn't so occupied, I think, was the other thing.
Do you think that's something that we're missing out these days? Is that time to just be like, what do I do?
Oh, definitely.
And then asking those questions?
Yeah, I think being bored is probably the best thing. Having something to do all the time, why would I be motivated to go pick up something new if I'm occupied already?
So the discovery of Jane Eyre and that opening that world to you, has that given you any insight on how maybe other people's learn as you teach them, as you craft a lesson for them with art?
I did a homeschool art class at the Art Center, and I had never really taught children before. They talked me into it. Those were already kids that weren't used to learning in a classroom environment. So that was interesting. I couldn't make just a standard classroom environment. It had to be a little bit more customized. But there were a couple kids that were just always bouncing off the walls, pushing the tables. They'd get up and their table was 2 feet from where it started. And I was like, what do I do with them? And I think I underestimated them. And we did a project. The Art Center has this big collection of horns, brass horns, and they just sit in a cabinet. And I was like, let's do a still life with these horns, and we'll use charcoal, which I cannot believe I let them have charcoal because that's asking for it with this crew. And we'll set them up in weird configuration, and you follow the lines and do the contour drawing of a French horn with a trumpet and something else. I let some of them sit on the floor. I figured that out by then. If you're going to push your table 2 feet, we're just an art class. I don't care if you sit on the floor. The classroom was silent. Everyone did beautiful, perfect drawings, but it was because it was hard enough that they were engaged and they really had to focus. And I was like, wow, I should just made this harder the whole time. But it was also on them to figure it out. I didn't give any instructions beyond the first 5 minutes of this is what we're doing. Don't rub charcoal everywhere.
So the time and the space is what I'm hearing for creativity. And you said that the reason that you learned was because it was something interesting to you, and then you were sort of in charge of your learning experience. So talk a little bit more about that, finding something that grabbed your attention and then going after it.
I've learned more about that as a professional painter because when I originally started painting, I was interested in painting. I guess I didn't have something I was really invested in personally. I never quite knew what I wanted to work on, or kind of abandoned things. And when I got into painting the floor landscape, there are endless things I can work on. And I'm really into it. I think it's the most beautiful thing ever. That level of investment, that's what drives me, is I'm very connected to it personally. It means something. I think it's beautiful and I want people to see it. I mean, painting is learning. One of the teachers that I did online courses with this guy named David LaFell, who taught at the Art Students League for 20 years or something. I don't remember. And they did a series of videos, he and his wife, Sherry McGraw. And he would say, it's not really about the painting. It's about getting to learn. And I always thought, this is so interesting. This guy's been painting since he was 19. He'd been drawing since he was a teenager and painting forever. And he's still super into it because he doesn't see it as just his job or just producing something. It's a learning experience for him every time. It's that learning and exploring that keeps you committed to it more.
What are you learning right now? What have you set as one of your goals for your painting process?
I'm always learning, but I think that right now, process wise, that's always ongoing. Your painting should always be getting better. I don't try to set out to challenge myself, but sometimes I do paint things that I don't know how to do it. But for me right now, the learning is actually more of an organizational issue than it is a painting issue. I have a lot of big shows coming up, and I am not usually a routine person. I have to do an actual production schedule and stay on that. So sometimes this is more of building a structure, learning and learning how to stay with it in order to be able to function and actually still do the normal stuff.
So is that coming with the amount of work that you're accomplishing is the structure that you have to set up, which is kind of opposite of how a creative person
Yeah,
works.
it's the amount of work I will not be accomplishing if I do not set up the structure is what it is. There's just no other way to do it. And I came from a family with a manufacturing background. I understand how production schedules work and what needs to be done, but it's just getting myself on one.
Can you talk a little bit about growing up around here? You're local, you've lived here for many years.
Yeah, I grew up in Lake Wales. I actually was born in Tallahassee, and my family moved back down here when I was like 4 or so to run the family business. I just went to Hillcrest, which is an elementary school up the hill from where you are. I went to McLaughlin for 2 years, which is the middle school here. And then I transferred to All Saints, which was an extremely small private school at the time, which was awesome for me because it wasn't always good in those huge social things. And it was very cliquey in the bigger schools. And there, at one point, I think my class had 12 people in it. I got a lot of individualized attention and did have time to explore the interest, and the teachers really encouraged it. They weren't having to stay on a plan or anything. So that was really cool for me. But after high school, I went to Stetson, which is another Florida school in DeLand, and started out as an art major. And I was not cooperative. And I didn't want to learn the way I didn't understand why I had to do the things that they wanted me to do. And they didn't feel like explaining. And I was getting C's in my classes. And my mother was like, maybe since you're getting all A's in your English electives, you should switch over to an English major. I loved English, so I'm fine with that. I'll continue taking art. I probably could have minored in art and Spanish had it been more on it. And then when I graduated, I came back here and worked at my family's manufacturing company and did marketing and sales, which was really good for me. It kind of had to break me out of my shell because I was very shy, and I would have to go to sales events and set up for big shows and do all of that, as well as other things like writing technical materials and producing videos and all. I learned a lot. I used to do the website myself. So a lot of that went toward what I do now because I think I have a mindset of I do have to make a living at this and I don't get to just hang out by myself and paint. Like this requires marketing and some strategy.
So, advice to somebody who's thinking about becoming an art major and their family is saying, oh, you really need to get a career going where you can make money. What is your counter argument to that?
I don't think you have to have an art major, I guess, which probably art professors right now are like, no, that's my job. It's great if you know for sure that's what you want to do and you found the right school that teaches what you want and all of that. But if they're not teaching what you want, I don't think it's going to do you a huge favor getting an art major. Um, there are a lot of independent schools now, and ateliers, or people that do workshops. There's more than one way to do it. Most artists have to have a normal job for a while. It's just how it works, unless you go into teaching. If you know that's what you want to do, then maybe you could just have a regular job first and then go to workshops or go to special schools when you can. And that would give you more time to actually get into the work you want to do instead of spending so much time and money doing assignments. I went back to night school at Polk State at one point just to brush back up on like figure drawing and portraits, just so I had a more dedicated time. And I think that's a really good option because it's not so expensive as trying to go to one of the bigger schools. And the teachers were great. Like the class was one of the best classes I've ever had. That's a good option and it's not going to break the bank.
Who are some of the teachers that inspired you to be more authentically you?
That's an easy one. My high school art teacher and also middle school art teacher, Pam Danis, she taught me to paint when I was, I think, 13 or something. But I had her through my entire high school career, and she's still a good friend. And she was someone that the kids always trusted. She wasn't going to include you in adult business, but you knew she was at least someone that was always supportive and honest. And I think that was really important. And that she would teach sort of life lessons through art too. I would be like so aggravated, and she'd be like, "It's okay, honey, because when you're frustrated, it means you're learning." I'd be like, but it makes a lot of sense. And in a weird way, that's comforting. Like, you're frustrated because you're learning. So you'll be better in a little while. She had a lot of advice like that. Step back, take a break, like things that where you're talking about gaining perspective by not having your hands on something all the time. That's a life lesson too. I really appreciate her help. And David LaFell and his wife, Sherry, who I've mostly studied with via video. I did eventually study in person with David, but just his perspective toward painting was also, I think, his perspective toward life. Idea of always learning and maybe making something beautiful and composing things is really, it's really important.
How has your perspective changed over the last couple years or maybe even each decade? How does that change?
I think I'm probably more laid back now. Like, I think when you're in your 20s, there's a lot of expectations. You think you have to do all of these things in order. And now I'm kind of like, I work on whatever comes into my life and what's working. And that's sort of the direction. It's not that I'm anti struggle, but like the struggle is maybe time to check yourself and make sure you're in the right direction. There's no problem with working hard, but like if something's not working, maybe you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. Because I feel like everything I do, it just kind of keeps rolling along. And I'm like, this obviously is what I'm supposed to be doing now. And there's not so much resistance, and I don't try to push it any particular direction. I kind of follow where I'm led.
How has your artistic aptitude helped you connect with the Lake Wales community and pouring back into it? I see you all over doing different civic events, but what are you involved in with that giving back component and piece?
The biggest part of my art, like involved in that sort of stuff, is that I tie in with conservation. So I do mostly Florida land-based art and some cultural stuff where it's cultures that are on the land, like cowboys or Seminole and Miccosukee people. That's a way to do storytelling where it's enjoyable for the community and they're learning something, and maybe they'll get curious about Florida land. I think there's an unfamiliarity. Like, I grew up in Lake Wales and I had no idea what was even around me. And we were people that went out on the weekends and like shot Coke cans with BB guns, and my brother would chase an armadillo and we have a campfire. But that wasn't quite far enough out that I really got, that was just a cow pasture. I didn't quite make it far enough out. I was 10 miles from Tiger Creek Preserve. But I think bringing that vision of Florida to people, it touches their hearts, and it's an opportunity for them to really get more invested in the land that they're living on. So that's important to me.
The part about the land and conservation, we are on the cusp of a lot of growth that's coming to Polk County. What are some of the things that you're worried about, but also you're excited about because we're at that crossroad?
I am very concerned about water issues. Anyone that has grown up here knows for years they've been like, turn off the faucet when you brush your teeth. You only run your sprinklers on this many days. The aquifer has been low for a really long time. Now we're tapping into the deep aquifer, and that's sort of experimental. That sort of growth is very concerning because I would like to have readily available and inexpensive fresh water. And on the other end of this, literally, is wastewater, and it doesn't process itself. It has to go somewhere to be processed, doesn't make it there safely because our equipment's up to date. But all of that affects the water further downstream. So I hear a lot of news about red tides and all of this. A lot of that effluent, if you want to call it that, is coming from up here. So that's a scary issue because you want your oceans to be healthy. You want to have fresh drinking water. You want to be able to grow a garden. Some of these same things seem very basic, and they seem to be a little in danger.
What are you doing about that, since it's something that is important to you because you're aware of it. It should be important to all of us, but what are you doing to help?
When there's something that I think is easy for people to understand and is from the right perspective, I try to share it online. I have the marketing co-op, the Florida Gallery, which is all Florida land-based art and artists. And we try to mix in information that's either ecological or stuff like that. I don't like to overburden people because you can get sucked into that. And then people are just so stressed that they get fatigued and they don't even, can't even function. So trying to feed people as much information as they can handle in hopes that it will activate them and they'll actually care, and be careful how they vote, be careful how they talk to their elected representatives, and be really intentional about what they're doing, and hopefully help, because it's a little bit scary right now.
What are your hopes and goals for the next 5 years, next 10 years with your art and your learning and your involvement in the community?
Hopes for the future. I'm hoping that the Florida Gallery project gets going a little better. It's been a one-person show this whole time, which is a lot to run a marketing co-op and have to be a professional artist and paint as much as I do. But we've launched a print shop, which I'm hoping will start generating some revenue so that it can kind of pay for itself. And eventually I could hire some help to do some of these things. Right now, that's more of an online presence, but making that more in person, either through other organizations putting on shows that host our artists or through us setting up shows too. Because a lot of people have wanted to see the artwork in person. And we're like, sorry, it's online only. You can go see this artist here or there, but it would be nice to be able to put everybody together and actually do shows.
Talk a little bit more about the Florida Marketing Co-op. I am unfamiliar with it. I want to hear just how it got started, what it is, like, what is it? It sounds great, but tell me a little bit about it.
Well, I thought a lot about not wanting my paintings to be valuable after I was dead. I'm trying to make a living now. And I thought, who has actually done okay while they're alive? And how do artists become known? And I thought, if we're just asking in terms of Western art, what artists do you know? Most people know the Impressionists, which is a group. And if I said, which Florida artists do you know? People would say the Highwaymen. And I was like, there's something in common here. This is a group effort for marketing, basically. I'm like, why? So there was something to that. If you can make a group marketing and then people have something to understand what you have in common more and what your story is. And just the difficulty of fighting the algorithm as an individual artist, it's just not possible to create enough as one artist. I thought, let's bulk our online marketing so that we have enough to generate interest on the algorithm. And I picked all artists initially that were tied in with conservation work. So if they had to go speak somewhere, they could do that. I do about 10 artists at a time. And it just helped create a lot more content versus just one artist constantly trying. That's not what you want to be doing all the time. You want to be out painting or, making things. I also share historic artists because I thought it was important to anchor it. So I like to have the historic and the contemporary art together. So you can see that there's a continuum. A lot of this land is still here. We launched about a year and a half ago, and we have maybe 40,000 followers on Instagram. And we are able to drive print sales through Instagram, which is amazing that actually works. A lot of our artists have gotten a lot more followings, a lot more commissions, stuff like that. So it works. The other not-for-profits that are in the conservation type field have been picking up the artists to do workshops and shows, which is all I ever wanted. So I'm like, please steal them. This was the plan. I wanted them to be out there. It doesn't matter if they're under our tent or whatever, as long as they're getting out, we're getting the right artist out there.
So it's looking outside your own interest as a group, and then everyone else is succeeding and rising.
Everyone was going to have to come up at once is what I decided. Otherwise, it didn't make sense. So,
well, that's a really good life lesson right there.
Yeah.
So if somebody's interested in going to this Florida co-op, where do they go? What are they looking for?
So it's curated. I felt like I love local arts organizations because when you're first starting, you really need that support. And it's a good place to meet people and start exhibiting, get critiques, show, build your resume. I wanted to be able to curate it a little more so that I knew that it was within the specific type of image making we were looking for. And so I choose all the artists. I'm always happy to hear about new people, but when it comes down to it, I have to really select just a few because I can only do so many. And the way that people remember images, they have to see them a lot of times before they remember. And it's important for me to keep repeating the same people as well. So I can't just keep throwing everything at the wall. I have to be consistent.
And is this the online forum? Like you're
It's
going to a website or what are you going to?
mostly Instagram is where we're most active, but it shares to Facebook too. And there is a website, but I don't share everything on the website. That's more just so people can understand what it is. And then there are prints available there.
So if I'm interested in going to this, I get on Instagram and I am looking for.
It's just the Florida Gallery.
That is so
Nobody took
nice.
that name. That's how
Wow.
underserved this whole idea is. I'm like, I can't believe this is the dumbest name. It doesn't sound really exciting or anything, but it's so obvious that I was like, we'll just take it. But it's shocking that no one owned the Florida Gallery as a name for anything yet. That shows that we weren't really marketing that at all.
What other areas do you feel are underserved in the art community?
It's not so much as underserved. I think it's an educational gap that's been caused by photography and not working from life, and just a little bit of a loss of traditional skills. The way I learned to paint, you talk about painterly painting and paint quality, which is about making the material itself look really good and not just copying the image or making it look just like a picture. It's about making it look like beautiful paint. And I think we've lost some of that. It's the difference between something looking good on Instagram and something looking even more beautiful in person. I wish there was more of that kind of thoughtfulness going in, but it's something you almost have to learn person to person and in person.
What about the role of the scary world of AI and art?
It's more of a nuisance than anything. For people with taste, it's not going to be able to replace real artists. They want that human touch. They want the beautiful paint quality. That's not going to happen through AI, basically. I think people have already gotten a pretty good eye for when it's AI. They know, especially the younger, the kids know.
So when you know something authentic and wholesome and good, made with good quality material, you're not worried.
I'm not worried. There are a lot of nice people that want to support that traditional skill set and make sure that that continues, but also AI can't tell the stories I can and have that connection to the land that I have. And that's part of what people are looking. They're not just buying a painting, they're buying a story. It's a conversation piece for when people come into their house, and to say like, AI made this, that's not a conversation piece. You want it to be attached to an actual person and a place. When I first started painting, Tom Freeman, who is a local artist here, gave me some business advice. And he was like, you always got to be able to tell the story of where it was from because they're going to ask. And I was like, whatever. It can literally be painting of 3 oranges and they'll say, whose grove is that? I'm like, you better have a good answer. So I don't paint near retention ponds or anything. I make sure it's always a good place because you don't want to be like, it's the retention pond behind the mall. I really like those like water lilies.
But they are nice right there.
I mean, it's pretty. It's next to the storage units now. That's something that is very human that really can't be replaced as those experiences. And I try to always share that when I'm sharing stuff and let people kind of go along on the trip with me when I get to go somewhere cool.
What's been one of your most memorable paintings or favorite things to paint?
I love painting smaller creeks and things like that. Like I love painting out at Tiger Creek, and I've done a lot of that because it's the closest place that I can hike out to. But those beautiful like oranges and blacks and golden colors that the water gets during different times of the year, I think are really beautiful and unique to Central Florida. I think it's not the same color as the ocean. It comes from oak leaves and roots and branches that are in the water. So it's, and that white sand underneath.
There's so much to learn from thinking about things differently. And I love how you said sometimes you just have to change your perspective or take yourself out and then look at it. That's something we all can really keep in mind in life.
Yep. There's a lot of life learning in art and in just learning in general. If you can apply some of those skills to your life, you realize this isn't always so complicated.
Well, thank you for spending time with us today. I really enjoyed the conversation. And thank you for joining us. Whether you're a teacher, a parent, or just EduCurious, join the community as we explore various educational topics and learn from each other. We'll see you next time.